The Sacramento Kings are thinking big and they are trying to target John Collins. That's kind of interesting. Do you guys think that'd be a good trade for them? Post down below. If you guys are new, make sure you subscribe because 80% of viewers aren't subscribed and the 20% that is has the right idea. So make sure you join them if you want to be a part of the crew going forward. Either way, we appreciate you big time. We always say that, but we always appreciate you anyway. That being said, let's talk about the report that we have. Evan Sidery says the Jazz and Kings have conducted exploratory trade talks centered on John Collins. Sacramento can make salaries work while avoiding the tax by including Kevin Huerter and Trey Lyles. Collins is averaging 18 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists. I'm just rounding up or down, while shooting 44% on threes. So Collins has been lighting it up in Utah. That's pretty awesome for him. I went through some of the replies. I thought it was kind of funny. Kings fans are pretty happy to get rid of Huerter. You'll see why in a moment. Here's a theoretical trade you could do that one submitted. I guess this works courtesy of this trade machine. I typically use Spot Track, but whatever. That being said, I'm not sure you need to include Svi or Doug, but either way, they should just make this work by matching salaries as shown and as reported by Sidery as well. I think one thing that's kind of interesting, though, is that I think the market, right? I think the market has already been set by like the Nets trades, the Nick Richards trade, right? Like the trades we have seen. I don't know that it has a single first round pick been moved in any of them. I don't think so. Like not even like a protected one, right? It's all been 2 or 3 second round picks. So I'd assume that even though he's probably, I mean, I'm pretty positive, unless it was Dennis at the time, he's going to be the best statistical performer among those guys. I still don't think he's going to garner a first-round pick in a trade. If he does get one, it'll probably be a heavily protected one that may just flat out not turn into a first at all. Probably just winds up being a second. But I'd expect 2 to 3, maybe 3 second-round picks, and maybe a swap at best. But that's about it. And that's more or less just based off of merit, what he's done here this year, kind of how he's performed throughout his career, what you'd still be getting with him being still in his prime, things like that. But I think the market's been set, which is pretty interesting. I do think that's pretty interesting. Also, the Kings trying to get some size. I also like that a lot because the Kings don't have a lot of size in the first place. They only really have Lyles, Sabonis, who's awesome. Awesome. I love Sabonis. And they only really have Len. And the downside is they'd be giving up Lyles, keeping Len. They need to find a way to jettison Len the hell off the team because I'm going to be honest with you. Full disclosure. I recorded this video and my reaction to Alex Len was so egregious. it was so egregious. I almost threw up when I saw his positive, his plus minus, the diff with him on the court. It's minus 20. I did not expect that. Like I didn't. It was crazy. I was so floored. Here it is, filtered for Alex Len. Him being on the court. This is not an Alex Len hit piece. It's just more or less speaking to the fact they need size. Minus 20 in 376. They don't play him much. Right? His most used group, though, is minus 26, minus 28. He's always out there in some janky combinations. He's mostly a garbage time guy. They don't play him much. Okay, so I will give him a little bit of that, but they're bad on both sides while he's out there. And then the only other guy that they really have is Trey Lyles, which is kind of unfortunate because I really like Trey as a spot-up threat, as a glue guy. I actually have liked Trey for a while on pretty much all his teams. And wouldn't you look at that? He's 25 points better than Len, give or take, at a +2 diff. I'll take that. 2.5. I'll take that, man. They're good on the offensive end, scoring at the 75th percentile. Effective field goals a little bit lower than you'd like, but they're above average on the other things. The defense, a little bit below average, but opponents' offensive rebounding percentage, okay, that one's pretty good. But, for the most part, they're pretty good with him out there. The other piece in this is Kevin Huerter, who is another guy they need to try to jettison off their team if possible. It's nowhere near as egregious as Len, which could be some small sample size stuff, but he's still 5 points worse than Lyles at a -3 diff. Their most used lineup with him, ironically, is what's his starting group. They're +8. It looks like with him out there. So with him, Murray, DeRozan, Fox, and Sabonis, they're +8 with that group, and they're kind of average on both sides. That's fine. That really what the Kings are, is that they're a tale of of a team that should be much better than they are. It's kind of crazy when you look at the Kings' performances. Like, they are like, what was it? I think they were 14th in defense and like 3rd in offense or 8th in offense, something like that. Yeah, 8th in offense and 14th in defense with a positive net rating, 11th best net rating in the league. That does not look. Expected win percentage is 23 and 17. They're supposed, based on these numbers, they're predicting they should have a 23 and 17 record, but they've lost 3 extra games and they're at 20 and 20. Like, they're better than you would think, right? Because that 23 and 17 record is probably a top 6 seed in the West right now. It is. They would be the 5th seed at worst with that expected record, right? And you would obviously have to shuffle some things around. For example, like what if they flip some losses to the Lakers? I think they lost like 4 times to the Lakers. Or they just flip those and Lakers lose 4 more. You know what I'm saying? Like, you would have to change all this around. But my point is that the Kings are a team that profile as being better than they are. And they've just been a team that's been unlucky. Basically, when you look at all their stuff, they were getting blitzed by. If you look at the advanced metrics for like what teams are doing to them, they were basically lighting them up from 3. It's crazy when you see that stuff versus what's expected. They were just shooting well above that for a while. I think it started to normalize because the Kings over the last 10 games have been better. 7-3 over the last 10. They went on a nice streak. They did lose their last game, but basically since the coaching change, you could argue, well, I don't think you could argue. The situation was messy. It was not handled correctly. Letting him know after practice on the way to the flight, that's just dumb. Like, you don't do that. But regardless, they've been better. Can't argue with that. They've been better. The numbers say it. But at the same time, their numbers have looked this way all season. They should have been better than they were at the time. There's also a thing where Keon Ellis should have been playing more. And I do believe he has now started to play more last time I checked. We can look at his game log, but the team overall is starting to pick things up. And so back to the trade, adding in another piece for them is pretty good, right? Pretty good. And my point with all of this was that they do need another guy that's going to add some size. However, to my next point, look at these minutes. 5, 14, 14. Look at these other minutes. 38, 34, 49. To my other point, Trey Lyles is one of the only bigs on their entire roster, and he's been a positive for them. That's where this is kind of tricky. If you're the Kings, you shouldn't want to get off of Lyles. It just probably is a salary matching thing where they're kind of forced to do so, right? Now, the benefit to this is that getting back John Collins, I think is it's more than enough. Like, I think that would obviously offset it. Like, he's obviously much better than Trey Lyles. I don't think that's just a question or a debate or anything like that. That's just silly. Like, he's much better than him. That's fine, right? And the team would get better, and that will be fine. It's just more or less, I think they'd still need a third big because it certainly isn't Len based on what they have shown so far and what he's shown when he's given opportunities. But I wanted to show you guys this with John Collins. I think it's pretty interesting how his minutes breakdown have been for his career. So when you look at the amount of minutes he's playing per positions, basically how things look, I actually want to pull it up on here. I like it better on this page. How things look for him is that, I was thinking maybe he probably will in Sacramento run some small ball 5, but he's been awesome for the Jazz when given opportunity. Here's some of his stats as well, but I wanted to show you guys his minutes split. So right now they're actually using him over the last couple of seasons. He's been playing some 3, which he hadn't done at all basically in his career. He played a tiny bit in his rookie season, but they have been using him as a 3 out there. His on off is 8. That's pretty great. So, they have been using him that way. So there's still a negative with him on the court though, but that's just they're the Jazz. Like, they're not, but yeah, they've been using him that way. I think the Kings, because they're so out of size that they would just use him as a small ball 5. That's similarly to how they use Lyles anyway. Lyles typically plugs in as the backup 5, and they go to a entirely different spread out look when Sabonis sits. But so much of their team just revolves around Sabonis. And I do think that there's something to just having another all-star type big in the front. Can I say that? Has he been an all-star? Like, someone like he's like the next tier down, I guess. I think that's fair to say. Somebody like him on your team, I think there's some value in that, because when you get into the playoffs, if they make it that far, Sabonis is going to play 44 minutes a night. Like they're going to 40 plus minutes a night. They're going to really, really load that up. You don't need a backup five as much. You need somebody that can give you another look. And I think John Collins, since he's been shown to play at least on the three a little bit, the Jazz are a really big team. They got a lot of 6'10 plus guys over there. But regardless, they're a really big team. But since they have confidence in playing him at the three, I feel like he's pretty switchy. Like he should have quick feet, pretty switchy. They feel confident in his defensive ability on the perimeter. Speaking of defense, he's not a great defensive player. There's a whole lot of blue throughout his career. When you look at the defensive side of this graph, he's not good. Don't ever confuse him for being good. That's not really the argument. The Kings don't care as much about that. I mean, they're better at it than they used to be. They're 14th in defense. I think that's good enough to make a push, especially if they maintain that offensive rating. But he's not somebody that's going to really be out there as a secondary rim protector that much, things like that. Personally, I like this. He kind of fits their motif of going in and going hard on the offensive side. I think he'd obviously be an upgrade for them. I just kind of wish they would look for more of like a defensive lob threat kind of center that could be good for them. As a backup guy or something like that. It's just tricky. Like I said, that backup center spot, it's kind of tricky because you don't really necessarily, unless you're going to play Sabonis at the 4, which he did do a good bit with Miles back in Indiana. Unless you're going to do that, you don't necessarily need that as much. So I can understand that too. But another glue guy like Lyles, but more of a springy defensive player, I think could also be good, and you can get some different looks out there. But regardless, though, John Collins, I think, is an interesting name on the market. And like I said, I do think the market has already been set by some of the previous trades. And it's interesting, though, but if you're a fan of a team that needs a big player or two big players or whatever, these guys seem to be out there. Like Nick Richards just got traded. His name was in a bunch of rumors anyway. Mark Williams, I think after that trade, had a 30-point, 13 rebound game. I saw something like that. So kind of crazy. He's definitely the Hornets' guy. Nothing against Richards. He's awesome. But John Collins being out there right now, and the asking price doesn't seem to be very much. Like I don't assume they're going to get back a first for him or anything like that. Obviously, there's still a few weeks before the deadline. So things could materialize. Things could change at that point. And, we get closer to that point. But I don't think that the market is kind of crazy. So if you're a team that's interested in a big guy, you should probably try to get in on Collins, is my point. I think he could be nice in a lot of teams. And he makes $25 or so million. That's kind of the sticking point because that is a decent number to try to match without putting more than one player in. So hopefully you can get rid of some guys that you're not really using or needing, which is why, circling back to the Kings, they've tried to include Kevin Huerter, because I don't know that we pulled up Huerter in this version of the video, the non-re-recorded video, aside from his just lineup stuff, but he's been pretty bad. He shoots, I think, 30% on 5 attempts from threes. So if he's not out there getting buckets for you, you kind of can't have him out there at all. So weird situation to be in. But regardless, hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you check out the video Trevor did earlier today on all the latest in the NBA. Ooh, that rhyme.